As many of you know, I moved to northern Massachusetts just this past August, and I don't know very many people here outside of the church. So I recently signed up for an art class at the community center in the town next door to mine. I expected it to take me about 10 to 15 minutes to get there, but on these winding country roads, it actually takes more like 25. I was going to be late. And wouldn't you know it, I got stuck behind someone. I started judging them. Who drives a yellow car anyway? They must be some quirky weirdo or an egomaniac trying to draw so much attention to themselves. How dare they drive the speed limit when I am in a hurry? It was very frustrating. And living in Boston last year, I learned a variety of ways that one can express frustration for another vehicle on the road. I could tailgate the yellow car. I could flash my lights. I could swerve back and forth within my lane to express just how much I want to pass them if only I had the room. But I did not do any of those things because that's not the kind of person that I want to be. It took a little effort. And as we twisted our way around these narrow roads, I just kept praying that they would take one of the many opportunities to turn off of the route that I had to follow to get to this class. But it soon became clear that the yellow car and I were headed to the same place. When the yellow car turned into the community center parking lot, it stopped in the middle of the lot. There were cars parked along all of the edges, but the yellow car stopped in the middle, right in front of me. And then it backed up. And then it went forward again. And I thought, either this person is insane or I am. But again, I restrained myself. I did not swerve around them. I did not honk. I waited until it was clear that they had come to a complete stop before I went around them patiently and parked among the other cars. Then I took a deep breath, much like Sophia in our story. I was not going to make friends in my art class if I arrive in a huff. I also did not want to run into the driver of the yellow car in the parking lot, so I stayed there for a minute and bought myself some time. There was nothing I could do about what time it is now. But I could change my demeanor, my attitude going in there. I could go in ready to meet some new friends and get creative. So once I was calm, cool, and collected, I went inside and learned that our art class had very low enrollment. In fact, there were only 2 students. The driver of the yellow car introduced herself to me and then said, "You must have been right behind me. I'm sorry, I must have confused you in the parking lot just now." And I thought, oh no. Despite my best efforts, my frustration must have shown. But I just stayed open and curious, and I said, "Oh?" And she said, "Yeah, the lines of the parking spaces in the middle are so faint that I can never land them right the first time. I always have to back up and realign myself." Oh, yes. Those lines are so faint, I didn't even know there were parking spaces there. Then our conversation turned to our artistic task for the day, and I felt both relieved and humbled. There was nothing wrong with the way that the yellow car was driving. I had been impatient. My mental and emotional state influences the kinds of assumptions that I make about other people and how generous or not they are. My assumptions, I mean. I actually love quirky weirdos. And anyone who drives a yellow car probably has the level of self-esteem that I aspire to. In my 20s, I actually almost bought a yellow car. How quickly and easily we forget the things we have in common with other people. If I can recognize how my mood is affecting my perception, then I can choose to assume a more generous story. We talk about generosity in terms of goods or services, giving someone a ride or donating food or money. But what about generosity of spirit? I could have used a little bit more that morning. Maybe a slow driver is lost. Maybe the guy speeding past me on the highway is actually late to pick up his mom for her PT appointment. I'll never know. So why not assume the more generous story? When I'm running late, it's tempting to blame others for being slow rather than accepting the direct consequences of my own actions. I can also be more generous with myself and say, it's okay to make mistakes. I can learn from them. Next time, I'll look up how long it takes to get there before the day of. In the Article 2 reflection group here at church, last Monday we were discussing the values of Unitarian Universalism, and something struck me during the conversation around the values of interdependence and generosity. Giving with the expectation of receiving in return is not true generosity. Giving and receiving is reciprocity, and that's important. It's valuable and part of interdependence. True generosity, however, is giving without the expectation of receiving anything in return, just freely giving. We offer generosity of spirit not to change anyone else's behavior or to get favors in return, but rather to be the kind of person that we want to be. Tailgating or flashing my lights wasn't going to change how the yellow car was driving. It was just going to make the entire experience less pleasant for all involved. And that's not the effect that I want to have in the world. Generosity of spirit involves accepting what is and deciding to add a little powdered sugar. Love is not a finite resource. There are, of course, some things that make it difficult to be generous with our spirit. Trauma, for example, and broken trust. Once burned, we are twice shy, and that's understandable. Sometimes it's not my perception at all. Sometimes the other person's behavior is actually problematic. And it's important that we be able to take an honest look at ourselves to know, am I just hangry? Or is this situation actually not okay? What part of it is my mood? What part of it is my assumptions? And what part of it is the actual facts of what's going on? If another person's actions are indeed a problem, what do I need to do in order to love myself and love them? I've heard it said that boundaries are the distance from which I can love you. This is not the only definition of a boundary, but I think it's helpful for this topic this morning. Sometimes the most generous thing I can do is remove myself from a situation and send loving kindness from afar. Unitarian Universalism does not condemn any person. We believe all people are worthy of love and belonging, but not all actions are acceptable. So I want to be clear, extending a generosity of spirit towards someone is not the same as approving of their behavior. People can be downright awful, and there are some truly horrific things happening in the world today. Why should I send love to someone, even from afar, when they are causing so much destruction and pain? Again, generosity of spirit is not about changing anyone else's behavior. It's about facing the facts and choosing to be a loving person anyway. While I was writing this sermon, I do this a lot. I look up words in the dictionary. It's like one of my sacred texts. And the first definition of grace in the Merriam-Webster dictionary is this: noun, unmerited, divine assistance given to humans for their regeneration or sanctification. As a Unitarian Universalist, I believe we humans have the power to give each other grace. And that act of spiritual generosity is how we heal the world. I don't know why people do terrible things. But in my experience, people who are hurting tend to hurt other people. It's a vicious cycle. And the only way I know of to interrupt that cycle is with love, however unmerited it may seem. Love is not a finite resource. It does not cost us anything to send love towards someone who is causing pain in the world and to wish them healing. A candle loses nothing by lighting another candle, but the world gets a little bit brighter. They say that every person has a story that would break your heart. And we can't possibly know all of the stories of all of the people we'll ever meet. But we can choose to interact with them, every person, with compassion, dignity, and respect. And that generosity of spirit lifts up all of us. As you go through your week, may you be generous with your spirit. Spread a little powdered sugar. Imagine God is already at the tea party or in disguise waiting with you at the airport. Why not? When you encounter trouble, choose to assume a more generous story. It doesn't cost you anything. If we can ease one pain, we shall not live in vain. The choice is yours. Blessed be.